have you seen like anything that's super unique? Like as far as like, what's the most unique form of cold outreach that you've ever received, or maybe done yourself because you have experience in sales?
It's interesting because I was thinking about this question, and when I was in sales myself, I was very fortunate that my outreach happened a lot with executives on an airplane. It was that's where I got the majority of my clients, because I was traveling around working with other companies, but you're sitting on a plane and you start talking. And I think because it was more real, I wasn't trying to actually cold call them. They're actually genuinely interested if they ask you what you do. And it's really not about spewing out what you do. It's really about turning those questions around and asking about them. And when people do that, it makes you feel like I'm actually interested in what you have to say. And we should be interested in what we have to say when we're cold calling. So for me, I think that personally, when I was doing sales, that's kind of how it came across. When I hear folks reach out to me now, I have to say in the last couple of years, there's been nothing spectacular that really steps out of the box.
Why do you think that is?
That's a great question. And if I think about the cold calls that I have had, part of it is they're not doing any research. Part of it is that you have a group of folks whose their main job is just to call and get an account executive on the calendar with you. And it's unfortunate because they don't know anything about you or your business. And half the time they don't even understand what that account executive is selling.
Mm-hmm.
So as you engage in this dialogue and you're like, wait a minute, do you actually even know what this person sells and who you're representing? And that's a big turnoff.
So it's more of a, do you think that maybe comes into play because a lot of account executives are dealing with massive lists? And just to play devil's advocate, right? Do you think it's one of those things where it's like, hey, we're playing with this massive list? I know a lot of people do it that way. I've kind of seen both sides, right? Where you go, very targeted outreach, where it's like, if we can book 3 meetings a month kind of thing, like that's what we're really looking for. And you only need to target, obviously you get it until you get 3 meetings, but a lot of people will maybe deal in big lists. And so do you think that maybe plays into it, where people are, it may not even be the fault of the account executive, it might just be a fault of the company?
Well, I think it's also back in the day, and I'm talking in the 90s, I just aged myself. It used to be, it was a numbers game, right? If I make 20 cold calls, I'm probably going to get 1 or 2 to say yes, that I can actually have a follow-up call with them. And in those days, I was making the calls myself. I didn't hire somebody else to run my business, my book of business. I was actually doing it myself. Where today, I feel like there's so many social medias that you could actually attract people. LinkedIn is probably the number one, but there's also the different networks, the different groups, how you follow people. So I also feel like being particular about the people or the companies that you want to partner with and spend your most valuable asset, which is your time, to build a relationship with them.
So what would be kind of the number one recommendation? I know this was not on the questions that I sent you, but this is such an interesting conversation already. Is if you were to like have one piece of advice for an account executive when it comes to prospecting, let's just say specifically when it comes to cold outreach, right? What would be your number one recommendation for account executives, SDRs, BDRs?
I think it is knowing who you want to target and the objective of targeting them. Is it just for a transactional relationship with them? Because that is definitely different from a relationship-based transaction. And when we're talking about the latter, it's actually understanding what that partner will do, can do, how you can impact their bottom line or what's important to their goals and objectives, and what are they going to get in return for it?
Yeah.
So I think it's really looking at, if you're going to spend the time to cold call, make it worthwhile and make it for companies that could benefit from your product or service, and that you have a story to tell as to why.
Yeah, absolutely. That's perfect. We'll kind of switch gears here a little bit when it comes to cold outreach in general, right? Like, how many emails, how many phone calls, how many LinkedIn DMs we connected through LinkedIn? So I
Mhm.
did cold outreach to you, and I actually had to follow up. So you were a tough one to crack. I'm just kidding. but how much cold outreach would you say combined all together are you getting per day?
So for those that are not in my spam, I had to take a look. Anywhere from 6 to 12 a day that don't land in my spam, and then multiple on LinkedIn. And when I think about LinkedIn, if someone reaches out to me and I'm not interested, I think it's really important to follow up with them. So yes, it took you two pokes, but I was going, it is my intent to always reach back and say, thank you for reaching out. I don't have a need right now, or say, yes, I'm interested. And I think that it also depends on what's happening within your business at the time. If I have a need that you've piqued my interest, then I'm going to look to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So more of a, straight line, but also have a good follow-up process as well.
Mhm.
And I think, like, kind of going back to your original point too, if they've done enough research on you, they noticed that you were in sales. So so and
Yes.
I actually did do that. So I was like, I saw that you had read it, and so I was like, she might be waiting for me to follow up here with a solid follow-up. So I was like, all right, follow up with a case study. There you go.
Mhm.
But all right. So when it comes to so people reaching out to you, you said about 12-ish, and then a handful on LinkedIn per day. What are the general like products and services? Because you're in that L&D space,
Mhm.
right? And so what are the general products and services that you're usually getting sent, or people are trying to connect
So
with you about?
either a learning management system or an LMS.
Hmm.
Some of it is financial, some of it is employee engagement, some of it is employee recognition, because those are some of the things that I'm responsible for. And it really varies along those gamuts. Also, a lot of leadership, that the newest and brightest leadership training, we've got it. Let me show you what it is.
Right. Yeah, that's been a consistent theme with VPs of HR, with L&D, with talent management, that they said that employee engagement softwares has been like one of the biggest things that they've been getting sent constantly over the last, really since the beginning of COVID. Do you think there's any specific reason for that, or?
It's interesting. I think as over the last 2 years, as the way we work in our environment has changed, that there's a need to engage differently with leaders at all levels. And I believe that this has brought that market more to us in the L&D than the traditional classroom training. And we don't have enough coaches, we don't have enough leaders. If you read a lot of the posts on LinkedIn, it is all about what a leader should be and how we should be. And it's also feedback from those who are working and what their experience is. So I feel like it's being inundated from that side, because people feel the need, that they need leaders, mentors, coaches, and that's what's driving the market.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean the market changes constantly, right? So if it was an employee engagement last month, it's going to be, or this month, it's going to be something else the next month. And so, um, what would you say is the number one thing about cold outreach that kind of annoys, or something that you maybe see that you don't like when it comes to cold outreach, and you're like, this is kind of a rookie move, or you know what I mean? Because you have a sales background, you probably have a really good perspective on this. Is there anything that annoys you about cold outreach?
When they call my cell phone and I don't know who they are. So obviously my cell phone is published
Hmm.
for work. And I think that that's one of the things. The second thing is that if I do pick up and I tell them that this is not a good time, they continue to talk.
Mm. So they push the envelope.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's usually probably somebody that's dealing in a big list, right?
Yes.
Don't you think? Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think the
Okay.
third, there's one more thing, sorry,
No, you're
there's
good.
one more thing. I got a cold call a couple weeks ago about a learning management system. And I shared with the person that I was very happy with who we currently have as our LMS, and that we were in contract with them. We've been with them for 6 years, and I foresee us staying with them for the next couple of years. And then they started to badmouth this LMS. And I just said, you know what? I said, I appreciate your interest, but no, thank you. And that, when you start to go after your competitors, that to me is very weak. And it's one of the things that anyone in sales should never do. They're competitors. They could be better than you. They could be less than you. They are still your competitor. And when you speak ill of your competitors, how else are you speaking ill?
Exactly. Yeah, it's a 10,000-foot view of who you are from an
Mhm.
integrity standpoint. I
Yes.
agree. Yeah, I mean, one of our main competitors is Zoom Info, right? That's like the big one, right? Um, we never badmouth them. We say we're actually a lot like Zoom Info. We're just specifically for HR.
Mhm.
And
Well,
people are like, oh,
yeah.
that's cool. You know what I mean? It's like
Well,
we never say anything bad about them. We're just kind of like, oh,
no,
we're actually a lot like them. We're just a little bit more niche. So, yeah, which is,
and the way to go is like we are similar to them this way, and we are different from them this way. That
bingo.
is the clearest way that you could possibly be to get your point across. Is what's the differentiation?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Is there any forms of marketing that really stick out to you? I mean, cold calling is really sales marketing, right? From
Mhm.
in a sense. Is there any forms of marketing for you though, as a director, as a leader, right? That really stick out to you and is like, oh, this is, whether it be infographics or videos or, plain text. What sticks out to you?
That's a great question. I think it has a lot to do with its presentation. And so it could be social media, it could be at a trade show, it could be in a email. And it's really about the presentation, if it's going to pique my interest and what I'm looking for at that time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. That's interesting because everybody's really kind of said like, oh, like I love infographics. Like every VP of our HR said, I love infographics or statistics because they're very visual. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Same with kind of the L&D interviews that we've had too. It's like, oh, I love an infographic or a case study. But you're right. Like the way it's presented is oftentimes more important than what the mode of the marketing is. Yeah.
Exactly. And I need to, are those statistics important to me? So if your presentation highlights something that I'm interested in, then you're going to catch my attention, and I'm probably going to pay a little bit more attention to it. If the headline or that tagline is not, I'm probably not going to go further down into an email or into an infographic or any of those things. It's really has to be on top of mind for me the majority of the time.
So the subject or tagline is really important to you.
Yes.
Is there anything is in your like in the past has there been one that's really stuck out to you in particular that you can remember?
Not
That's
that I
tough to
can.
say, right?
Yeah,
Because you
yeah,
get,
it is tough to say because I'm trying to remember like our current learning management system, what actually attracted me to them. I'm trying to remember what that is, and I actually can't remember at this time when I started looking. Recently, we just contracted with a reward and recognition, and I really appreciated the user experience. That's what we were looking for. How can
Mhm.
we have a great user experience and ease of use? So for me, that attracted me right off the bat to learn more about that company.